For more on the NATO summit of world leaders, where disagreements are breaking out and at least one ally appears to be leaning against the alliance, we're joined by University of Ottawa professor Roland. He's a former senior advisor to Prime Minister Trudeau on global affairs and defense and served as an advisor to the NATO Secretary General. He joins me in the studio. I got to get your quick thoughts. Trudeau, Trump, I mean, that's kind of, that's an awful friendly encounter.
Romance there. But I think the Prime Minister would be very happy with that exchange. And, you know, it's really the fourth or fifth time that Trump in public has been given the opportunity to take a negative shot at Trudeau, and he has not done so.
What does that mean?
I think that the passage of the USMCA through the House of Representatives in the United States, that Trump really sees Trudeau as an ally in that. And if you contrast the tone of that meeting and some of the recent previous meetings and exchanges to just over a year ago, after the G7 meeting, when Trump said that Trudeau was weak and dishonest, and he was still threatening to tear up the NAFTA, and he was threatening to trash Canada's auto sector. I mean, we're in a much, much better place now than we were not that long ago.
And, you know, I thought when they said 1.4 or 1.5, Trump would go, what? That's a long way from 2%. What are you doing?
Yeah, he said moving in the right direction, which is precisely the message. Yeah, he said moving in the right direction, and that's precisely, I think, the message that the government of Canada wants Trump to be absorbing.
Okay, but realistically, are we moving to 2% in any foreseeable future? It seems like that's a can being kicked a long way down the road.
Government's plan is to increase spending over the next 10 years by another 10 or 11 billion dollars on defense. That is not a plan to reach 2%. The Germans, by the way, just announced for the first time that they will reach 2% sometime in the early 2030s.
Oh, okay. Well, so Trump probably won't be around by the time we fail to reach 2% in 20, 30 years. Yeah, you never know. I do want to ask you, though, because French President Macron said basically NATO, this NATO alliance, is brain dead and needs to be a reset button needs to be pushed, or a resurrection button of some kind. What do you think of that comment? Is he right that there needs to be some sort of makeover of the NATO alliance?
Well, the weird thing about NATO right now is that you almost have two alliances. One of them is the military operational alliance, which is actually working really well. We have more troops moving east. They're engaged in exercises. We're deploying well. The number of troops is U.S. has 65,000 active duty troops in Europe right now. That number has gone up. So if you ask the generals and you look at what NATO is doing on the ground, it looks solid. It's the political infighting that's the second NATO that's remarkable. And Macron was commenting on that, but he also contributed to it. And the result is, at this meeting, you've seen this kind of weird change of roles where we're used to Trump being the disruptor and insulting the alliance. And now, weirdly, Trump today was defending the alliance
and Macron
against
was
Macron.
trashing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's actually slightly encouraging.
I'm curious what to make of Turkey. I mean, this is a country that's part of NATO, yet it's buying Russian missile systems and all that. Should Turkey be outside NATO instead of inside, or is it better to keep your
Not yet.
Close
Not yet.
closer?
I think that there are real challenges dealing with Turkey. You mentioned the acquisition of the Russian missile system, which is astounding for many NATO partners, and also its actions in Syria and the fact that it's reverted to authoritarianism in many respects. It's still better to have Turkey inside the tent, especially with a more aggressive Russia, and to try and manage that relationship with Turkey as best as possible. Turkey controls access between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Russia has a Black Sea fleet. There are strategic reasons to want Turkey in the alliance. Turkey was an authoritarian country during the Cold War. When it was also a member of NATO, there were strategic reasons we wanted Turkey there. But Turkey is playing a game now. It's playing both sides, and that might end up blowing up in Turkey's face.
Whether Canada on this, I was talking today to the NATO commander for the Iraq mission, and it's training. It's kind of like classroom focused. It's not really an in-the-field operation. Do we have a more aggressive role to play as a NATO alliance partner, in your view, or should we be somewhere else?
Well, I think the main function that we're playing in NATO is actually leading this battle group in Latvia, which has been part of the deployment of forces to Eastern Europe as a deterrent against Russia. And so these are the kinds of roles that Canada has played and should play. It's true that we don't spend 2% or even close to 2%. But the Prime Minister was also right in that clip you showed that Canada shows up when it's asked to perform difficult tasks within NATO, whether it was in Kandahar or part of the Libya operation or leading this battle group in Latvia. It's actually very important that we do that we carry our weight in terms of the tasks, even if we're not spending 2%, because we're not spending 2%.
Just quickly, tomorrow, what might we see? Tomorrow is sort of the main session. Do you expect any revolutionary changes in NATO's plot line?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, you're going to have these leaders come together for 3 hours, which is much shorter than previous summits. They've shortened and made this meeting much more compressed because they've been afraid of Trump disrupting this meeting as well. 3 hours together. This is where the two NATOs come together. The operational military NATO, like what NATO is doing, readiness, space, et cetera, that's technically what they'll be discussing at the meeting. But anything can happen in terms of that political infighting. We might wake up tomorrow morning to find another kind of chaotic scene. Hopefully not.
Okay. Well, it's always more interesting to have chaotic scenes.
No, not in NATO. Bad.
Fair point. Fair point. All right. Thank you, Roland. Appreciate you coming in as always.